What just happened late Friday could end up being one of the most important financial turning points in recent history. And if you're watching this right now, you need to understand exactly what it means for your money, your future, and the direction the economy is heading. After months and months of debate, uncertainty, political back and forth, and constantly shifting numbers, the massive $1.9 trillion stimulus bill has finally cleared a major hurdle. The Senate has passed its version of the bill, and now it's moving forward in what looks like the final stage of this long-running saga. For millions of Americans who have been waiting, struggling, and wondering when relief would arrive, this moment is huge, and it signals that help is not just coming, it's right around the corner. Now here's where things get even more interesting. For a long time, people expected that the final number might shrink. There was talk of 1.2 trillion, then 1.4, then maybe something closer to 900 billion. Even as negotiations continued, many believed the Senate would cut the package down to somewhere around 1.5 or 1.6 trillion dollars. But that didn't happen. Instead, lawmakers pushed forward with nearly the full 1.9 trillion, making this one of the largest economic relief packages ever approved. That decision alone is sending a very clear message about how seriously the government is taking the current economic situation and how aggressively it's willing to act to stabilize households across the country. So the big question everyone is asking right now is simple: when will the money actually arrive? Because at the end of the day, headlines and politics don't pay bills, money does. And the answer is much sooner than many people expected. Once the House gives its final approval, which is expected very quickly, the bill will move straight to the President's desk for signature. After that, the process of sending payments begins almost immediately. We're not talking about months of waiting. We're talking about a rapid rollout, especially for those who have direct deposits set up with the IRS. That means some people could start seeing money hit their bank accounts within days, not weeks. And let's talk about those payments, because this is where things really start to feel real. The bill includes direct payments of $1,400 per person. That might not sound life-changing at first, but when you break it down for families, the impact becomes massive. A family of 4 could receive up to $5,600. That's not a small boost. That's rent, groceries, bills, maybe even catching up on debt that's been piling up for months. For many households, this isn't just extra money. It's a lifeline, and in some cases it could be the difference between staying afloat and falling behind. But the checks are only part of the story, and honestly, they might not even be the most important part. One of the biggest, most powerful changes in this entire bill is something that hasn't gotten nearly as much attention as it deserves, and that's the expansion of the child tax credit. This is where things start to shift from short-term relief to something that could have long-term impact, especially for families with children. Previously, the child tax credit was set at $2,000 per child, and it worked mainly as a tax offset, meaning you only really benefited when you filed your taxes the following year. If you didn't owe taxes, or didn't earn enough, you might not have seen much benefit at all. Now, everything is changing. Under this new plan, the credit is being increased significantly. For children over the age of 6, the credit rises to $3,000 per year. For children under 6, it jumps even higher to $3,600. But the real game changer isn't just the amount, it's how the money is delivered. Instead of waiting until tax season, families will receive these payments monthly. That means instead of one lump sum at the end of the year, you could be getting $300 per month for each young child, or slightly less for older children, directly into your account. Think about what that means in real life. That's consistent, predictable support every single month. That's groceries covered, school supplies paid for, childcare expenses managed. For single parents, especially mothers who have been disproportionately affected during the pandemic, this could be one of the most impactful financial supports introduced in years. And unlike the old version of the credit, this one is fully refundable, which means even if you don't owe taxes, you still get the full amount. That's a huge shift, because it extends support to people who need it the most, including those at the lower end of the income spectrum. And while this expansion is officially set as a one-year program, there's already growing conversation about what happens next. This isn't just about temporary relief, it's also a test. Lawmakers are watching closely to see how popular this measure becomes and how effective it is in reducing financial stress for families. If it proves successful, and if public support remains strong, there's a real possibility that this could be extended or even made permanent in some form. And if that happens, we're not just talking about stimulus anymore, we're talking about a fundamental shift in how financial support is delivered in the United States. Now, let's step back and look at the bigger picture, because what's happening here goes beyond just one bill or one round of payments. Over the past year, we've seen something unprecedented. Multiple rounds of direct payments have been sent out in a very short period of time. For some families, the total amount of support received could exceed $10,000. That's a level of direct government assistance that simply hasn't been seen before on this scale. And once something like this happens, it changes expectations. It changes what people believe is possible, and it changes what they might demand in future economic downturns. There's also a political reality to consider. Public support for these payments is strong. Surveys have shown that a large majority of Americans approve of direct financial assistance during times of crisis. That creates pressure on policymakers moving forward. It becomes much harder to argue against sending aid when people have already experienced its benefits firsthand. While it's unlikely that we'll see checks of this size going out every year, the idea of direct payments as a tool for economic stabilization is now firmly on the table. And then there's the concept that many people have been talking about more seriously than ever before, something that used to sound radical but is now entering mainstream discussion, and that's the idea of a basic income. Not necessarily the full universal basic income model that was once proposed, but something smaller, more targeted, and more politically feasible. Programs like the expanded child tax credit are starting to resemble that concept in practice. Regular, predictable payments designed to support basic living expenses, especially for those who need it most. Of course, the future of all this depends heavily on politics. Control of Congress plays a huge role in determining whether these programs continue, expand, or disappear. If leadership changes, policies could shift in a completely different direction. Tax credits could be reduced or rolled back. New forms of spending could be introduced. That's the reality of how fiscal policy works. But what's clear right now is that we're in a moment of experimentation, a moment where new ideas are being tested on a large scale, and the results of these experiments could shape economic policy for years to come. So, as this bill moves toward final approval and eventually becomes law, the focus now shifts from if to what happens next. People will be watching their bank accounts, waiting for deposits, planning how to use the money, deciding whether to save it, spend it, or pay down debt. Businesses will be watching consumer behavior, looking for signs of increased spending. Economists will be analyzing data, trying to measure the impact. And policymakers will be paying attention to public reaction, preparing for the next phase of decision-making. This is more than just a stimulus package. It's a signal of change. It's a reflection of how quickly things can evolve when circumstances demand it. And for millions of people, it's a moment of relief after a very long and very difficult period. The checks are coming, the support is expanding, and whether this marks the beginning of a new approach to economic policy or just a temporary response to an extraordinary situation is something we're about to find out very soon.